They're coming to take me away, ha-ha. They're coming to take me away, ho-ho, hee-hee, ha-ha. To the happy home with trees and flowers and chirping birds and basket weavers who sit and smile and twiddle their thumbs and toes and they're coming to take me away.
I'm crazy for trying and crazy for crying, and I'm crazy for loving you.
I've had a lot of people over the years, when I start talking about Jesus, they say, oh, you're a fanatic. And I consistently will say, well, thank you so much, because I take that as a compliment. And today, especially in the world that we live in today, when the last thing in the world that you want to be is a religious fanatic, right? Because that is the worst. I rejoice in being a fanatic. I don't know about the religious part. The word fanatic comes from a Latin word called fanus, or is it phanom? 4 years of Latin, and this is what it gets me. And what phanom means is literally, it means to be in the temple. That's literally what the Latin word means. That's where the word comes from. And people back then, back in the days of ancient Rome, I'm not going back 2,000 years, somebody who spent all their time in the temple was considered a fanatic, not necessarily a bad thing. And you know, by the same token, people who were outside the temple habitually, they were profaned, because that's what pro means. It's on the other side. It's outside, right? Yes. So fanatics were inside the temple. Profane. Those who were profanous were outside the temple. That's where we get our word profane. Profane has no association with holiness. So fanatic, and I don't care what the world says, because trust me, the devil wants to remove your ability to communicate. I am a fanatic. But I'm not supposed to compare me to you. If I compare myself to Elijah, then I have to say, well, am I really a fanatic? Because I want to tell you what made, you know, what the result of, or I should say this is kind of a chicken and egg thing here. Why was Elijah a man with this power who stood in the presence of God? Look at when he went up on Mount Carmel, right? Yes. And let me just read you something, you know, about that. Again, we're going back to 1 Kings in the 18th chapter. It said that Elijah came near to all the people. Now, if you don't know the story of Elijah and this whole thing, Israel had fallen into sin, which was not uncommon. This is the people of God, and they are living ungodly. Trust me on this. I mean, they are living incredibly ungodly under the leadership of King Ahab and his wife Jezebel, right?
Serving Beelzebub.
And the people of God were just not living. They were not living godly. At best, they were compromised. At worst, they had just turned their back on God entirely. So Elijah comes back into the land of Israel after 3.5 years. And he calls the people of God up to Mount Carmel, along with all of the false prophets of Baal. And he speaks to the people, and here's what it says in 1 Kings 18:21. Elijah came near to all the people and said, how long will you hesitate between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, follow him. But the people did not answer him a word. They didn't say anything at that point in time. You see, he's telling them to make a choice, make a decision. This is like Joshua, way back when, in the 24th chapter of Joshua, right? He said, choose you this day whom you will serve. He confronted the people of God and said, you got to choose. Choose today. Choose now who you're going to serve. Well, Elijah is doing the same thing once again, confronting the people of God, saying, choose who you're going to serve. You can't serve. Jesus Christ said it. He said in the Sermon on the Mount, he said, you cannot serve. No man can serve two masters. He didn't say you shouldn't serve two masters. He said you can't serve two masters. You can't have 1 foot in the world and 1 foot in the Word. And that is exactly the picture, the word picture in Hebrew that Elijah portrays or paints when he talks about this, how long will you be divided? The Hebrew is almost a play on words. It's like a tree with two branches coming out. You know how the branches are kind of going off in separate directions. And it's like a bird walking with 1 foot on one limb and 1 foot on the other limb. And you can start walking out. Well, sooner or later, either you're going to choose one, right, or you're going to fall down through the middle. You can't keep going and getting wider and wider apart. And trust me, the world and the Word, is as wide apart as they are getting wider apart every single moment. All right? But here's the key. Elijah made his choice. When Joshua called and confronted the people of God, he had made his choice. That's what he said, as for me and my house, we shall serve the Lord. He had made his choice. So the question is, have you really made a choice? Have you determined that you will serve God? No compromise. That you will stand in the presence of God. No compromise. That you will do what it takes to follow Jesus Christ. And he said, count the cost. This is not a game. He said, if any man would follow me, you've got to die to yourself. You've got to deny yourself. You have to pick up your own cross and follow him daily, right? Isn't that what he said?
Yes.
My point is, if Elijah has something going for him, it's the choice that he made. And in verse 14 of chapter 19 of 1 Kings, Elijah said this, I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. I have been very zealous. He was filled. There's a song that we used to sing years ago. I am filled with a jealous zeal for God. It was, coming from this portion of Scripture about Elijah. Elijah was a man on fire. He was on fire for the Lord. He had made up his mind and decided. But he was hot for God. Now remember, this is where the church ends in this world, is in Revelation chapter 3 when it talks about the church of Laodicea. And God says, Jesus says to the church, I wish that you were hot or cold, but because you're lukewarm, I'll vomit you out of my mouth. Let me tell you something. Elijah was not lukewarm.
No, he wasn't.
He was on fire for the Lord. And we need to be on fire for the Lord.
Amen.
The problem is, it's difficult to do in this day and age because we've had such a culture of compromise inside the church for so many years. Years for so many decades. Decades for so many centuries. But you know what? You can't blame it on the church because it all boils down to you and the decision you make in your own life. It says each man has to work out his own salvation in fear and trembling. It's not about the other people, it's about you. In my life, it's about me and the decisions I make.
I have decided to follow Jesus.